I'm Dawson Schmidt here with the latest stories and developments in this week's Commodity Roundup on Trader PhD. Markets woke up to some positive news on Thursday following talks between President Trump and President Xi. The two parties tentatively agreed to suspend reciprocal tariffs against each other. In a social media post, Trump said that China agreed to continue the flow of rare earth mineral exports and work to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. But eyes do remain on soybeans yet. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said China agreed to buy 12 million metric tons of soybeans this year. Additionally, China said it will buy a minimum of 25 million metric tons of soybeans annually for the next 3 years. That comes after Bloomberg reported that China bought 3 cargoes of soybeans from the U.S., equivalent of about 180,000 metric tons. Also a part of the agreement, the U.S. and China agreed to suspend a tit-for-tat shipping fees for 1 year. Those fees had gone into place on October 14th, creating a short-term bottleneck. The U.S. still does plan to incentivize U.S. shipbuilding to enhance the American supply chain. Soybean futures surged to the highest level in about 15 months this week, leading up to the media reports. January futures topped $11 a bushel before giving back some of those gains. U.S. soybean exports have been struggling in the absence of China. Grain export inspections data for the last week showed that total soybean shipments are down 37% this season. However, exports to non-China countries are up nearly 60% compared to a year ago. That has been led primarily by demand from key buyers Mexico, Japan, Colombia, and South Korea, as well as demand from other countries. A sharp drop in feeder cattle futures over the past week has auction buyers on edge. The limit down move in CME feeder cattle futures set a negative tone for the market this week. Monday's auction at the Joplin Regional Stockyards in Carthage, Missouri saw feeders sell for $25 to $40 lower compared to a week ago. Similar declines were reported in Worthing, South Dakota, where yearling steers and heifers sold $25 to $30 lower. Shaky cash trade comes as President Trump said the administration is working on taming high beef prices. The administration says it plans to raise the quota on how much beef from Argentina can enter U.S. tariff-free. Additionally, the USDA says it plans to support herd expansion through deregulatory reforms, beef processing expansion, increased access to federal lands for grazing, and other incentives. Mexico's agriculture minister also traveled to Washington this week to meet with U.S. counterparts about reopening the border for cattle imports. However, a date has not yet been set for when Mexican cattle can return to U.S. feedlots. Despite ongoing market uncertainty, wholesale beef prices continue to climb this week. Choice cutout values reached a 1-month high, reflecting steady consumer demand at the meat counter. On Sunday, the U.S. struck trade deals with Malaysia and Cambodia and announced a framework for trade with Vietnam and Thailand. In a joint agreement, the U.S. government and the government of Malaysia said they reached an agreement on reciprocal trade. The country also committed to addressing non-tariff barriers that affect bilateral trade, as well as allowing preferential market access for U.S. exports. Cambodia agreed to eliminate its 100% tariff on U.S. exports in a separate agreement on Sunday. Cambodia also agreed to address labor rights issues for citizens, as well as prohibiting goods produced by forced labor. Similar frameworks were announced for Vietnam and Thailand that would reduce trade and non-tariff barriers for the U.S. exports. The U.S. is committed to leaving its reciprocal tariffs on imports from those countries in place. Southeast Asia has been identified as a growth market for U.S. agricultural exports. According to the USDA's Economic Research Service, the region is the 3rd largest market for U.S. products and is projected to expand in income and population. Thanks for watching. I'm Dawson Schmidt, and this has been Trader PhD.